Hello and welcome back for another episode of Financial Freedom by 40. For those of you who are new to our channel, we're a Kiwi family of 4 currently travelling around Australia in our Jayco all-terrain caravan. Each week we are sharing an episode of what we have been up to as we travel around Australia, and now we've decided to launch a new series of the best of the big lap. In these videos we will do a run through of various different places that we have visited as we travel around Australia. We're going to run you through what we learned when we were going there. We're going to talk about the camps we stayed at. We're going to talk about all of the attractions in the area. We're hoping this series will help you when you are planning your big lap. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to drop us a comment or send us a message on social media. We are more than happy to help answer your questions that way as well. In this Best of the Big Lap video, we are going to be talking about the best things that we saw in Karijini National Park. Located in the Pilbara region of Australia with its stunning red soil, Karijini National Park is about 14 hours drive north from Perth, 9.5 hours south from Broome, or about 7 hours inland from Exmouth. So it's not the fastest place to get to, but it is truly worth the effort as it is an absolutely stunning part of Australia. There are WA Parks fees for entering Karijini National Park, but these are included if you have a WA National Parks annual pass. And just a little tip for those of you travelling with kids, if you want a discounted WA National Parks pass, you can get a discount code from NaturePlay WA, which gives you 50% off your parks pass. So let's jump in and talk about some of the attractions in the Karijini National Park. First up, we are going to talk about Dales Gorge and Fern Pool. This was one of the first places that we visited when we visited Karijini National Park in April 2025. The Dales Gorge walk is made up of a number of parts. There are sort of 3 sections that you can do. One of them takes you along the rim of Dales Gorge, the other one takes you along the base of the gorge, and then you walk from there through to the Fern Pool where you can have a dip. So this first part is us walking along the edge of the Dales Gorge doing the rim walk. It then takes you down to a set of stairs where you can walk down and into the gorge. But first of all, you go past a couple of lookouts, and it's well worth taking the little detour out to the lookouts to have a look down into the gorge. And one of the places that you can look down into is the circular pool. And that's what we are looking at here from the little lookout. You then go down the stairs and into the gorge. This is one of the easier gorges we thought to get into. It has a fairly well formed staircase compared to some of the others, which do require a little bit more clambering to get down into. Once you get down into the base of the gorge, it's a fairly easy walk through there. The surface is pretty much like what you can see here in the video, fairly level, a bit of rock climbing here and there, but nothing too onerous for you to get through. Pretty easy to do when you are travelling through with a family, and we do think that this was one of the more family friendly of the walks at Karijini National Park. As you go through the bottom of the gorge, you do come across a couple of places like this where there is a little bit more water, and you do have to sort of do a little bit of rock jumping to get across it, but it's nothing too onerous really as you get through there. The rock formations as you go through here are quite stunning. They're really beautiful with lots of different colours, and if you look carefully at some parts of the cliffs, you can actually see lines of blue asbestos. The park's information is that these blue asbestos veins are absolutely safe provided that you don't touch them, but do keep your eyes out for them as they are kind of cool to spot as you're walking through. After about an hour or so of walking along the base of the gorge, you come out at the Fortescue Falls. There is a large swimming hole at the bottom of the falls and lots of places for sitting around in the sunshine. We were a little bit late in the day when we got there, so we didn't take a dip in the pool at the bottom of the falls, but loads of people were swimming in there when we arrived. We instead walked past the Fortescue Falls down to Fern Pool. This is the Fern Pool here that you can see Xavier walking down to the little platform at, and it is a beautiful swimming spot. We got there quite late in the day and we managed to get the pool all to ourselves, which was pretty cool. You don't actually have to do the entire Dales Gorge walk if you want to visit the Fern pool. There is actually another little track down to the Fern pool that is only a short walk from the car park. So if you would rather just come here and take a dip in the beautiful pool, then just stop at the Dales Gorge car park and you can just walk down the steps, and it'll only take you probably 10 minutes or so just to get down to Fern pool, where you can have a swim. And as you can see here, there is a platform that makes it nice and easily accessible, and you can swim across the pool and over to the little waterfall for a look. If you're there late in the day like we were, make sure to look up in the trees, and you might even be lucky enough to spot some of the bats that are up in the trees there. There were probably hundreds of them when we were there, so keep your eyes open. Another fantastic spot to visit in Karijini National Park is Knox Gorge. Knox Gorge is probably one of the more challenging walks, or at least the first part is more challenging. It's quite a tricky climb down the cliff and into this gorge, but once you get down there, it is not too bad to walk through. There are a couple of places where there are a few little rock climb areas, but for the most part, we didn't find it too difficult once we got down and into the bottom of the gorge. And we feel like this is one of the best walks in all of Karijini. So if you're only able to do a few of them, make sure that you add this one to your list of places to visit. This is the part where you're coming down into the gorge, and as you can see, there's quite a lot of rocks. It is quite steep. There is a formed path that is marked out by little blue markers, so you can follow those markers to find your way around, but I wouldn't recommend doing this with little children. We found it quite fun. The boys, being 10 and 12, did really enjoy the climbing element of this, so the slightly more challenging walks were a bit more fun, we felt, for our family as a whole than doing a easy walk on a boardwalk or just a standard pathway. But we did see some families with younger children struggling to get down that first part and into the gorge. This part here you can see us climbing through as one of the trickier parts of getting through Knox Gorge. There are a couple of little places like this where you just have to scoot around the rock edge. We did find that a couple of these places it was actually easier to climb a little bit further up. So in this one you can see where our hands are. I think on the way back we followed that little shelf as it was a little bit easier to get along than the narrower edge that was closer to the water. But luckily none of us fell in. This little clip here gives you a bit of an idea of what it is like in some parts walking along the bottom of the gorge. So it's not perfectly level, but it is still not too hard to navigate your way around the bottom. A couple of little places like this where there's a little bit of water, but we didn't have any troubles getting through without getting ourselves wet there either. At the end of the gorge walk, there is this nice little pool. And on a hot day, it makes for a great spot to have a refreshing swim. It's also a really nice little spot to sit and have a picnic lunch before you return back along the way you came and climb back up out of the gorge. Now, one of the walks you hear talked about a lot when you see questions about Karijini National Park is the Mount Bruce Summit Walk. We had heard that this was a fairly challenging walk to take on, but we were really keen to check it out anyway. The Mount Bruce Summit Walk is categorised as a Class 5 walk, and this walk is one that definitely lives up to its Class 5 reputation. The information booklet for Karijini National Park says to allow 6 hours for this walk, and the estimate is pretty accurate. I think we completed it in about 5 hours and 45 minutes, including some time to explore around the summit area. Altogether, the walk is 9 kilometres return, but it feels like it's a whole heap longer than that, especially when you're coming back down again. There are some fairly challenging sections with loose rock and some areas where you do have to do a bit of climbing as well. Now, a question we've seen asked a bit too is whether this walk is suitable for children. We, of course, did this walk with our boys aged 10 and 12, and they did manage to do it really well, but it wasn't easy. I can't really have imagined taking them on this walk when they were a lot younger than they are now, as I think they would have really struggled. Now here you can see this is one of the more challenging parts of the walk, and if you've seen the reviews on Wikicamps or elsewhere of this walk, this is the part that has the chain climb. Now it's not quite as bad as I had imagined when I read the reviews on Wikicamps, but this segment certainly is the most challenging part of the whole walk. As you can see here, you do have that chain climb bit, and then there is a fairly steep clamber up some rocks. And I'd say it was tricky on the way up, but it felt a lot trickier coming back down again once our legs were feeling a little bit more like jelly. The boys actually really enjoyed climbing through this more challenging segment of the walk. You do have to be fairly careful as there is quite a steep drop off from here, and I definitely found it more challenging myself. You can see here I am coming up through the steep section of the walk, making it look a lot harder than the boys did. This climbing section though is only one fairly small part of the walk overall. There are long segments where you walk through fairly level sections. There is a fairly steady incline the whole way up, but definitely only small segments of it are as challenging as this bit here, and I might be making it look more challenging than some as I am a little bit scared of heights, so I was taking it fairly easy as we went through these parts of the walk. But you are definitely rewarded for all of your hard work once you get up to the summit, as the views at the top are really quite spectacular. And now, a couple of tips for you if you are planning to do the Mount Bruce Summit Walk. Definitely allow the time that the walk says, so 6 hours was a good estimate, and we would say it's a really good idea to start this early in the morning. I think we started at about 9 o'clock in the morning, and we thought that that would be a good time, but I would say it's better to start this a little bit earlier, more like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, before it warms up too much, as it does get fairly warm. The day we were walking wasn't really even that much of a hot day, and we did find it pretty warm as we were getting up towards the summit. The other thing too I would recommend is that you carry plenty of water. The recommendation is to take at least 3 litres of water per person, and we think that it is a good idea to stick to this. We took about 2 litres per person, and we felt like we definitely could have done with that extra litre. Another of the famous Karijini walks is the Joffre Gorge walk. Joffre Gorge is famous for its beautiful waterfall and the stunning swimming holes that are within the gorge. Unfortunately, when we visited Karijini National Park, this gorge was fairly dry. There wasn't much water flowing through at all, and the waterfall itself was completely non-existent. We did do the walk down into the gorge to have a look, and there were some people swimming in parts of the pool that were down there, but we felt that the water wasn't the nicest looking when we were there, and we had already been spoilt with so many beautiful gorges. We decided to give this one a miss. Another one of the popular walks in Karijini National Park is the Weano Gorge walk, and the Weano Gorge walk takes you down to the famous Handrail pool. The walk into Weano Gorge is not too taxing, or at least it wasn't when we visited in April 2025. At times this gorge can have more water in, and I believe that there are times when you do have to wade through water to get all the way to the end of this gorge and visit the Handrail pool. However, it was fairly dry when we were visiting, and we didn't have any trouble navigating the bottom of the gorge. It was much like you can see in the video here throughout. It is a stunning gorge and definitely well worth the walk in. This part here is the entry into the famous Handrail pool. Now normally you can swim in the Handrail pool, but due to the lack of water flow through this area, the pool is currently closed to swimming due to the water having gone stagnant. It's still a really pretty walk, and definitely one that we think is worthwhile doing. This was a fairly quick walk for us. I think altogether it probably took us around an hour to get in and back out again. And from there, we went to the Hancock Gorge and took the walk through to Kermit's pool. Now, both the Weano Gorge and the Hancock Gorge walks start from the same car park, and it was very doable to do these walks together on the same day. The walk down into the Hancock Gorge starts with a staircase in there, and then the bottom of the gorge is a little bit more tricky to navigate than some of the other gorges that we visited. There are quite a few places where you do have to scramble along the rocks a bit like this, and there are waterways, so if you lost your grip and fell in, you would find yourself getting wet. The sign at the top does recommend that you do this walk with water shoes on so that you have grip to walk through the base of the gorge, as there can often be quite a lot of water through there. Again, because it was fairly dry when we visited, we didn't have too much water. We didn't actually have to wade through any water to get through there. We were able to walk along the edges like you can see us doing here in the videos. But apparently at times it does have a lot more water through here, and it is recommended that you do have those water shoes on so that you don't slip, as the base can be very slippery. And in fact, we have seen photos and videos of people going through here where they have been wading up to their waists in water. We did walk past a guide who was taking a tour group through, who said you can walk through if you don't want to do the scramble along the edges, but we decided we would rather try and stay dry. Now this part you can see here, this is the famous spider climb area. Now if you've seen this one on Instagram, you might have seen it with a lot more water than there is at present. And you can see here I was able to scramble along the edge here without having to do the spider climb. I was actually a little worried about having to do the spider climb, so I was pleased that I could get through a bit easier than you usually can. Now at the end you find the beautiful Kermit's pool. This was a really nice spot to have a little swim at the end of the walk. The water is quite cool but very refreshing, and again a nice spot to stop and have a bit of a picnic. Of course, for those of you who do want to have the spider walk experience, this is still an option. As you can see here, these are our boys taking on the spider walk even though we didn't have to. Now this walk here is also a class 5 walk, although we definitely felt this was a bit less tricky than the Mount Bruce Summit walk, mostly just due to the shorter duration. Altogether this walk took us around about 2 hours, with a bit of time at the end before we turned back around to have a swim in the Kermit's pool. One of the last walks we did in Karijini National Park was the walk into Kalamina Gorge. This was the only walk we did in Karijini National Park where the road in to access the start of the walk was a dirt road. At the time we visited, this road was fairly bumpy, so not the greatest probably if you have a 2-wheel drive vehicle, but no troubles at all if you're travelling in with a 4-wheel drive. As you can see here, the Kalamina Gorge is fairly similar to a lot of the other gorge walks. The base of this gorge is fairly easy to walk through. There is quite a lot of water through here, but we didn't have to wade through water to be able to get through the gorge. We did feel like we probably could have given this gorge a miss if there was one to miss. This would have probably been it for us. We had visited a lot of gorges by this point in the trip, and this one was fairly similar to a number of the other ones. So if we were to give one a miss, this would be it. But if you want to do them all, then definitely it is still a stunning spot to visit. There is a swimming hole again at the end of the gorge before you turn around to come back out. This one probably wasn't quite as nice as some of the other swimming holes. It was a little bit murkier, but Ryan and Xavier still decided to take a bit of a dip in here before we went back up and out of the gorge. The final gorge we visited in Karijini National Park was the Hammersley Gorge, and I definitely think that we saved the best for last here. Hammersley Gorge is fairly easy to get into. It is separate from the other gorges in the park, so it's a bit of a drive up from the main part of the park, but the walk down into the gorge is nice and short. It's probably about a 10-minute walk down to the main part of the gorge from the car park. And then if you want to visit the famous spa pool, You do just have to turn right as you come in and then walk a bit up the hill to get to the area that is adjacent to the spa pool. This here is the pool that is right beside the spa pool, and it is the pool you have to swim across if you want to get to the spa pool. You can also clamber around the rocks to get there, but we found it easier just to swim across the main pool and then come up this little segment to get in there. It is a little bit ungraceful getting up there. We called it the beached whale movement, but once you are in there, you can enjoy a dip in the refreshing little spa pool with its cute little waterfall, and we did this backwards and forwards multiple times during the day. We really enjoyed this gorge, and we spent pretty much the entire day here swimming and enjoying the spa pool. It can get quite busy. The spa pool is very popular, so people are coming and going the whole time. But having spent the whole day there, we did get plenty of opportunities to jump in there. And as well as the spa pool and the pool beside it, you can see here there are lots of other swimming holes within the Handrail Gorge. So if one is busy, then you can go and visit one of the other swimming spots. And on our way out, the boys enjoyed sliding their way down this bit. This is the part that you do have to walk up to get in if you want to get up to the spa pool. Another question you might have if you are wanting to visit Karijini National Park is whereabouts you would stay. We stayed at 2 different camps near Karijini National Park. The first one we stayed at was the Mount Bruce Central Camp. The Mount Bruce Central Camp is a free camp, and it is located not too far from the highway on the Hamersley Mount Bruce Road. We found that there were a lot of campsites within here, so there was plenty of space for us and quite a few spaces that are suitable for large caravans. Definitely even more spaces if you are in a smaller van or a rooftop tent, but the area does go a long way back. We didn't explore it too far, but we could see when we put the drone up that there were loads of spaces further back. So if we had have explored more, we would have probably found lots of other sites we could have stayed at too. We left our van here for the 4 days that we were exploring this end of the Karijini National Park, and we had no troubles whatsoever. We felt completely safe staying here. There were quite a few other campers staying in the area, so of course that makes you feel a bit better as well about staying there. There are no facilities at all, so you do have to be fully self-contained, but there was a bit of firewood around, some old tree branches fallen around, so there is the option to collect some firewood if you want to have a fire while you're there. And of course, as you can see here, the location is absolutely stunning, looking out over the Hamersley Range. From the Mount Bruce Free Camp, we accessed the Mount Bruce Summit Walk. We also did Dales Gorge, but it was a bit of a long drive to get to Dales Gorge from here. It's pretty close to the Joffre Gorge, Knox Gorge, Hancock and Weano Gorges, and the Kalamina Gorge. The other camp that we stayed at when we were visiting Karijini National Park, like the Mount Bruce camp, this camp is also free, and the area to camp here is massive. I'd say this is even bigger than the Mount Bruce free camp. As you can see here, there is a huge spread out space in amongst all of the trees, and you can see a few different campsites here. It is the kind of place where you can camp with loads of other people around and still feel like you're there all by yourself. As you can see here, the scenery here is also absolutely stunning, and again there are plenty of fallen trees around here that you can cut up to use for firewood. There are even lots of rocks around, so if you want to build your own fire pit like we did, you can collect some of those up and make a little fire pit, or you could use one that has been built by somebody else and left behind. The access to Hamersley Gorge is just across the road from the park, so it's a fairly short, maybe 5-minute or so drive down into the Hamersley Gorge from here. So an excellent spot to stay if you plan to visit Hamersley Gorge. Again, there are no facilities, so you'll need to be fully self-contained. There are 2 camps within the Karijini National Park that do provide options for those who either aren't self-contained or want to have a few extra facilities. These are the Karijini Eco Retreat and the Dales Campground. Now, we didn't stay at either of these campgrounds, but we did drive through to have a look. The Dales Gorge campground is right next to Dales Gorge and Fern Pool, so if you want to do a bit less driving than we did and don't mind paying the camping fees, then this could be a good place to stay if you want to access the Dales Gorge and maybe spend a bit more time there enjoying the gorge and the Fern Pool. The Karijini Eco Retreat is near to the Joffre Gorge, and in fact you can walk to Joffre Gorge from there. It's also a lot closer to Hancock Gorge, Weano Gorge and Knox Gorge than the Mount Bruce camp. So again, if you prefer to do less driving, then this might be a good option to stay to. They also have a few extra facilities at the Eco Retreat, like a restaurant as well as bathrooms and some other facilities. So if that is your thing, then this is a good option for this part of the national park. There are also a couple of other free camps that are marked on wiki camps that are in close proximity to Karijini National Park. Again, we didn't stay at either of these, but we did have friends who stayed at the Albert Tolaglini rest area, which is on the eastern side of the national park. They said that this was a stunning spot to camp and they did wish that they could have spent more time there, so that could provide another option if you are looking for a free campground on the eastern side of the park. And we believe this is also fairly close to the Dales campground, so possibly a good free camp option if you want something over that side. Something else we wanted to touch upon was where you can go to stock up before you visit Karijini National Park. This was a question that we had before visiting. We had come directly from Exmouth after having visited the Ningaloo coast, and although there are supermarkets in Exmouth, they are a little bit pricey, so we were hoping there might be a bigger supermarket somewhere near Karijini National Park. As you know, if you're travelling, the small little supermarkets can get a little bit expensive. So we did find out that there is a Coles in the town of Tom Price. Tom Price is the closest town to the Karijini National Park, so you can do a click and collect order and pick that up at the Coles, which is I'd say about half an hour or so, maybe a little bit longer from the Mount Bruce free camp. Tom Price is also the best place for stocking up on other supplies such as fuel and anything else you need. There are quite a few shops in the town, so that would be your best port of call if you need other supplies. It's also the best place to fill up with water, as there is extremely limited access to water within the Karijini National Park. You can buy bottled water at the visitor centre, and there is some water available if you are staying at the Eco Retreat. We did also read that there is bore water available that is near the Dales Gorge campground, but that is water that needs to be either treated or boiled before consumption. If you want potable water, as far as we're aware, the nearest fill point for a caravan is Tom Price. Now, there are a couple of water taps that are marked on wiki camps that are just inside, just as you enter Tom Price. There's an area with a dump point and water fill. While this is the main water fill point for caravans in Tom Price, the first time we visited here, both water taps were not working, so we had to find another option. There are quite a few taps marked on wiki camps within the town of Tom Price, but we only found one that was a potable water tap that was working, and that was right next door to the recreation oval. Later on, we came back into town for some more supplies and to get some more water, and both of the taps at the water fill station as you come into Tom Price were both working. So just be aware that it can be a bit of a mixed bag in terms of getting water, so you do need to look around and check out some of those other water sources. We found that the tap next to the recreation oval was perfectly suitable. We had no issues with the water from there, though it isn't the easiest place to park up, and if there were activities on at the recreation centre, it might be quite tricky to pull in there with a caravan. The other thing to note too, if you're travelling with a caravan or camper van and need to empty your toilet tank, is that there are limited options for emptying these in and around Karijini National Park. There is a dump point at Tom Price. Again, that's where the water taps are. We found the first time that we visited there that the dump station was actually full. There is one at the caravan park there, so you can empty there. I believe if you're not staying there, you do have to pay a fee to empty your toilet cassette there. Otherwise, there is a toilet dump point in the Dales campground if you're staying there. The last thing I wanted to touch upon was just where to get further information if you are visiting Karijini National Park. There is a fantastic visitors information centre within the national park itself. We found the staff there to be super helpful, and they were really good at telling us what sorts of walks would be good to do as a family, and they also put together a bit of an itinerary for us that enabled us to do all of the walks we wanted to do within the time we had available, and they tried to include a swim in each day with the walks that we did, so that was pretty cool. There's also a very good museum at the information centre with lots of information about the national park, and while you're there you can get the kids to join the junior ranger program. So ask at the information desk. They will give the kids a little scavenger hunt form to complete while they're at the information centre, and they can get themselves a cool little ranger badge when they have completed the challenge. So that was quite a nice little touch as well. There is also a good information centre in the town of Tom Price, so that is a great place to get some initial information about Karijini, but also a good place to get information if you are wanting to travel on from Karijini north and you need to get a access pass for the Rio Tinto access road. Well, that's a wrap on the first episode of our Best of the Big Lap series on Karijini National Park. To make sure you catch our next episode of Best of the Big Lap, or to see our regular weekly episodes as we travel around Australia, make sure to hit the subscribe button so that you get all of the episodes as they go live. You can also follow along with us on social media at Financial Freedom by 40. And if you have any questions about this week's episode or any other of our episodes, feel free to drop us a message. We're often on Instagram and Facebook, so they're the best places to contact us, again at Financial Freedom by 40.